Not everything in the Old West was dust and heroism. From the mid-19th century to the early 20th, the U.S. pushed its territory outward while creating myths, waging conflicts, and turning names into legends. In this video, we bring 25 findings from rarely explored archives and interviews with historians. Get ready. What once seemed like folklore now reveals behind-the-scenes stories that change history. Number 1. The detectives who haunted outlaws. Bandits from coast to coast trembled at the sound of Pinkerton. In 1850, Allan Pinkerton founded an agency that changed the game of fighting crime. Detailed records, suspect portraits, and early searches for fingerprints set a new standard that decades later would echo in FBI practices. Jesse James and the James Younger gang ended up in their sights. The leader was never caught by them, but constant pressure pushed the gang into the shadows. With their reputation on the rise, the agents started protecting politicians and tycoons, acting as a strong arm of the law, sometimes heavier than it should have been. And things were only going to escalate from there. Number 2. The Planted Diamonds, the scam that fooled America. In 1872, with the gold fever still burning, two visionaries, Philip Arnold and John Slack, announced a secret gem field deep in Colorado. Gossip spread through clubs and offices. Bankers, politicians, and mining tycoons rushed to buy a share. The trick was simple and cruel. Salt the land with purchased diamonds and rubies, scattered right where the first digs would happen. During technical visits, guests would find stones right on the surface, a sign sold as proof of a one-of-a-kind deposit. The sense of urgency did the rest. Limited lots, lightning offers, contracts signed without a breath. When the frenzy seemed unshakable, Clarence King appeared, a geologist respected in elite circles. By analyzing samples and the site, he noticed inconsistencies that didn't fit any natural deposit. Modern cuts, an unlikely mix of origins, and zero compatible geological evidence. The story began to crack, and as King followed the glittering trail, another question gained weight. Who was cashing in every time another proof popped up from the ground? Number 3. Bass Reeves, the real hero behind the Lone Ranger. Son of enslaved people, Reeves escaped as a young man during the Civil War, carrying nothing but the will to stay alive. In Indian Territory, what is now Oklahoma, he learned local languages and built bonds with tribes that protected him from capture. When the conflict ended, he became a federal deputy west of the Mississippi, the first black man in that role. Records from the Fort Smith court place him alongside Judge Isaac Parker, strengthening his reputation for integrity. Over the course of his career, he arrested more than 3,000 criminals, including some of the most feared outlaws of the West. And that's where the legend begins. Number 4. Calamity Jane, between the trail and the legend. Martha Jane Canary, born in 1852, was one of the few women of the Old West to take on roles seen as masculine. Orphaned early, she took care of her siblings and learned how to survive in harsh territories. Her fame grew through stories of bravery and loyalty as a gunslinger, but the picture is blurry. Friends praised her, while critics called her feats inventions. Local newspapers mixed facts and gossip, fueling the magnetism around her name. Between military camps and frontiers, her presence broke protocols, and each new account raised the same question: where does biography end and spectacle begin? Number 5. Alfred Packer, the case of the Colorado cannibal. In 1874, Alfred Packer left camp for the Rocky Mountains with 5 companions. Months later, he came back alone, weak and evasive. The authorities in Lake City grew suspicious. Searches uncovered mutilated bodies, and forensic reports pointed to murder with signs of cannibalism. Packer claimed he only acted in self-defense and that, trapped by cold and hunger, he resorted to flesh just to stay alive. The jury didn't buy it. He was convicted and gained a dark reputation. Since then, the episode has echoed through archives, books, and films, fueling debates about guilt, survival, and just how far desperation can drive a man. And there are still details that divide historians. Number 6. The heist that opened the tracks to crime, 1866. A whistle cuts through the night as John and Simeon Reno pull off the first major train robbery in the United States. The target? An Ohio and Mississippi Railway convoy. They walked away with about $13,000, enough money to buy entire farms. The domino effect came fast. Outlaws like Jesse James saw a method worth perfecting. The Reno brothers mapped routes, schedules, and the guards' routines to strike by surprise. From that point on, train robbery became part of the Old West playbook and later a staple of cinema, adventure, calculation, and risk on the rails. Number 7. The Johnson County War. In 1892, Wyoming became the stage for a direct clash between cattle barons and small ranchers. Without solid evidence, the former branded their neighbors as thieves and hired gunmen to fix the problem. The result was a miniature war. Fences cut, houses burned, summary executions, families fled, property was lost, and fear spread everywhere. The crisis grew so intense that the federal government had to step in. Less remembered than the gunfight at the OK Corral, this episode shows how, far from the law, money calls the shots, and leaves a warning that still echoes today. Number 8. The wire that closed the West. Until the early 1870s, the plains of the West were wide open. Cattle roamed freely, and small ranchers feared seeing their animals mixed in with the barons' herds. In 1873, Joseph Glidden patented barbed wire. Cheap and efficient, it made it possible to fence off land, organize pastures, and keep intruders out. The result was immediate. The long Texas cattle drives lost their purpose, border disputes grew more tense, and in just a few years, the once open horizon turned into a patchwork of fences, opening a new chapter of conflicts and redefining who held power there. Number 9. Belle Starr, Queen of the Outlaws. In 19th century newspapers, Belle Starr, born Myra Maybelle Shirley Reed, rose to fame as the most notorious bandit of Indian Territory. Raised around names like Jesse and Frank James, she followed the frontier trail. After marrying the Cherokee Sam Starr, she joined horse theft gangs, drawn by the danger and the sense of freedom. Elegant in her bearing and steady with her 2 pistols, she built an official record that shaped her notoriety. In 1889, at 40 years old, she fell into an ambush that was never solved. The silence around the crime only amplified her legend and cemented her as an icon of rebellion in the Old West. Number 10. Stagecoach Mary, the courier who crossed Montana. Mary Fields, known as Stagecoach Mary, changed the game of the Old West when, around 1895, she became the first black woman hired by the United States Postal Service. With a rifle slung over her shoulder and a revolver at her hip, she traveled dangerous routes in Montana, often alone. Sun or snowstorm, she never strayed from her path. Prejudice was constant, but soon gave way to respect. When snow blocked the way, Mary cleared it. If the river froze, she crossed it. Her strength and discipline made sure the mail got through. At a time that shut out women, especially black women, Mary kept the wheels turning, and the next delivery was already waiting around the bend. Number 11. Bodie, the Whispering Town. In California, Bodie boomed with the gold rush of the 1870s. Saloons, brothels, and gambling tables thrived, and adventurers fought over every ounce of ore. But the boom faded fast. A series of fires swallowed entire streets and left the town frozen in time. Today, the historic park preserves creaking doors in the wind and dusty storefronts. Visitors talk about shadows crossing windows and footsteps with no owner in the alleys. One tourist put it simply, "The old saloon gives you chills." Legend has it that anyone who takes something from Bodie is cursed with bad luck until they return it. Would you walk those streets at nightfall? Number 12. The Cochise County War. Tombstone, Arizona became the stage for a showdown that split the town. On one side, the Cowboys and Sheriff John Behan. On the other, the Earp brothers with the support of Doc Holliday. The shootout at the OK Corral in 1881 lasted about 30 seconds, short enough to become legend. But that was just the beginning. Ambushes, executions, and sleepless nights followed. Morgan Earp was shot in the back. Wyatt set out on a relentless manhunt. The streets echoed with gunfire and hurried footsteps, and Tombstone cemented its reputation as a tough place where the law always showed up late, and revenge still had chapters left to be written. Number 13. Billy the Kid and the Restless Grave. William H. Bonney, known as Billy the Kid, was said to have been gunned down in 1881 at Fort Sumner when Sheriff Pat Garrett pulled the trigger, a version accepted by historians like Robert M. Utley. At just 21 years old, his name was already running through ballads and dime novels, and his fame only grew. His grave became a site for visitors and also for attacks. The headstone was stolen twice and today is locked down with iron chains. Even so, the controversy lingers. Did Garrett shoot the right man? Or do the rumors of escape keep fanning the flames of the myth? And what other clues have yet to surface? Number 14. The Lost Gold of the Superstition Mountains. In the Arizona desert rises the mountain range that feeds one of the Old West's most enduring stories. It's said that in the late 19th century, a German immigrant, nicknamed the Dutchman, discovered a rich gold mine there and died without revealing its location. After his death, prospectors scoured canyons and dry riverbeds for clues. From then on, expeditions followed, maps were fought over, and false trails misled seekers. For locals, the area carries a curse: disappearances, unexplained falls, lights on the horizon, and voices in the wind all add to its reputation. Newspapers reported vanishings, and the legend spread nationwide. Even today, the promise of fortune draws those bold enough to chase the secret. Number 15. Games, Cheats, and Fate. In the saloons of the Old West, the shuffle of cards mixed with the smoke. Many risked it all for a pile of chips. Among them, Canada Bill Jones ruled the three-card game. It wasn't just skill. His steady smile grabbed attention and set up the trick that fooled even veterans. He'd say with sarcasm that it wasn't worth leaving money with a swindler if you could take it first. In that twisted code, frontier towns grew, where quick profit walked hand in hand with threats and bullets. Figures like Doc Holliday, a gunslinger who was also a dentist, though rarely in the office, fed the legends. At every table, luck and fate faced off. A single turn of the cards could build a life or tear it down without warning. And the next bet was already calling your name. Number 16. Fool's Gold in the Ghost Towns. When the train changed routes or the mine ran dry, entire settlements were left adrift. That's when the scam showed up. The reopening of a gold or silver vein was announced, and exclusive shares were sold. To make it believable, the con men showed nuggets bought far away, quoted the report of a supposedly famous geologist, and pushed the now or never pitch. The fear of missing out did the rest. Once the deposit was made, they vanished. In poorly monitored areas, they were rarely punished. For some, the promise of easy profit sounded irresistible. For others, it meant losses with no way back. Phantom brokers showed up with worn maps and letters of intent, keeping the scam alive and spreading rumors in the saloons. Number 17. The Cherokee Bill Case. Crawford Goldsby, known as Cherokee Bill, was born in 1876, the son of an African-American man and a Cherokee woman. Still very young, he plunged into a string of robberies and killings across Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. With each crime, the federal manhunt grew, and his name spread through stagecoaches and saloons. Before he even fell, he was already a legend in newspapers and roadside talk. When he was finally caught, the murder sentence came quickly. He was only 20. On the gallows, he kept his boldness. "Hurry up with this hanging, I don't have all day." Bill's short path reveals the clash of cultures and laws in the West and leaves questions that still echo today. Number 18. The Arizona Thunderbird Mystery. In 1890, two hunters near Tombstone, Arizona, claimed to have taken down a large winged creature, possibly a thunderbird. The newspaper, the Tombstone Epitaph, reported that there was a photo of the animal stretched out against a barn. The image, however, never surfaced, though locals swore they had seen it. From there, versions of the story multiplied: living dinosaurs, legendary beings, or just a trick to sell newspapers. Paradoxically, the lack of evidence kept the legend alive. And the question that always comes back whenever the case resurfaces is simple: what happened to that photo? Number 19. Charlie Parkhurst, the stagecoach driver who defied the West. Charlotte Charlie Darky Parkhurst spent nearly her entire life living as a man to earn respect at the reins of California's stagecoaches. On dusty routes, she drove teams of horses through wind, rain, and the risk of ambush. During one robbery, she kept the reins steady even under the gun, and her reputation spread through the towns. Years later, when she died in 1879, came the shock. Charlie was a woman. Stories even circulated that she had voted in an election, long before women's suffrage was recognized by law. Who, after all, was this figure the West swore it knew? Number 20. Ice Storm, the die-up that swept the plains. In the winters of 1886 and 1887, blizzards tore through the Great Plains and caught ranchers off guard. In just a few days, the great die-up knocked down fences, buried trails, and wiped out entire herds. There are reports of ranchers who lost everything at once. Historians estimate hundreds of thousands of cattle perished from cold and hunger, leaving a huge hole in the local economy. From then on, open-range grazing was left behind. Fences, feed, and winter management became the new way to raise cattle. And winter wasn't over yet. Number 21. The Marfa Lights, the Desert Mystery. Since the late 19th century, the horizon of Marfa in southwest Texas has shown glowing orbs that appear, vanish, and return as if following their own rhythm. Researchers from the University of Texas recorded sightings and tried to explain them. Distant headlights, even though reports predate the automobile, mirages, gases from the ground. None of it closes the case. The fame grew. On clear nights, travelers gather by the roadside to wait for the show. Many report chills and a silent desert cut by dancing lights. The town even built a viewing spot for those willing to keep watch. Number 22. Chinese pioneers in the Old West. In the wake of the gold rush and the advancing railroads, thousands of Chinese immigrants came to the United States in search of a livelihood. Li Wen was one of many. Shifts of up to 14 hours, rough tents for shelter, dynamite blasting near his ears. The pay was low and prejudice high, but the work didn't move without them. On the Transcontinental Railroad, they carved tunnels and broke through rock with gunpowder and grit. In some stretches, 9 out of 10 workers were Chinese, showing just how vital they were to the nation's machinery. When contracts dried up, their bags headed to San Francisco, Seattle, or Deadwood, where laundries, steaming kitchens, and small shops left their mark on local flavors and streets. But the tide turned with xenophobic laws. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 shut doors and made life harder, spreading social wounds that lasted for generations. Number 23. Buffalo Bill takes the Old West to Europe. William Frederick Buffalo Bill Cody was an Army scout, a buffalo hunter, and later a master showman. With Buffalo Bill's Wild West, he packaged the fascination with the frontier into an arena spectacle. Cowboys with daring lasso tricks, horses at full gallop, and at the center, Native Americans, including Sitting Bull, reenacting clashes with settlers. The troupe toured the U.S. and crossed the Atlantic, performing for kings and packed streets. It's said that Queen Victoria was charmed by the animals and the supposed authenticity of the scenes, fueling his fame. At the same time, warnings grew. The show reinforced stereotypes and turned indigenous cultures into entertainment, and that would spark even more debate. Number 24. The Armed Mourning of the Old West. In the American West, many outlaws demanded to be buried with what defined them: revolvers, decks of cards, bottles of whiskey. They said these objects would serve them in the afterlife or keep their reputation alive after the last shot. Those who touched a worn deck or a dented holster swore they could feel the presence of its former owner. Over time, cemeteries holding famous names became destinations for the curious, and the hunt for relics led some to desecrate graves, despite reports of spirits unwilling to rest. Local guides swore they heard footsteps among crooked crosses and saw lanterns burning where there was no wind. But the West was bigger than the headstones. Among railroads built by immigrants, clever swindles, and people who broke the mold, indigenous legends and trailblazing women also traveled. And in the saloon nights, dark stories changed hands with every drink. Do you want to know just how far that frontier could go?